Hello and welcome to Lecture 1 of Unit 1. This is over Chapter 1, Section 1. This can be found on pages 5 through 9. This lecture is going to be covering the first people to live in America, the first people to set up societies, and how they lived and what their societies looked like. The first people in America. Most historians believe that the first Americans were men and women from Asia. The theory is that these men and women migrated, which means to move. So migrated and moved means the same thing like geese migrate. They move north or move south with the changing seasons. So these men and women moved or migrated east, crossing a land bridge in between Siberia and Alaska. So a land bridge between Siberia and Alaska. This is a map of what we are talking about. This is Alaska right here. This is Siberia up here. The idea is that these people came all the way from Siberia through a land bridge that is no longer there, which is covered up by water now, but at some point there was a land bridge and those people traveled through that. So I'm going to X out of this to try to get to a YouTube video that will possibly explain it a little bit better. You'll see on one side you have Siberia, on the other you have North America. That is obviously an animal and a hunter who will follow the animal wherever it goes. During the Ice Age, the water drops, which the seabed is exposed, and the animals are able to move from Siberia to North America, and the hunters follow. Once the hunters are over there, they set up towns and villages and camps, and they spread out all over North America. And once the glaciers melt, the water level increases, and there is no more way to get over there. So, that is what we're looking at with the land bridge. So let's get back to our PowerPoint. As the first Americans spread out, they created different societies. And a society is a group of people with common interests, customs, and ways of life. So we as Americans are part of an American society because we have common interests, we dress similarly, and we have similar ways of life. These people had similar ways of life and similar interests, but their first interests and their similarities begin with, they want to survive, they want to eat, they want to not die, and that's what brings them together. As these societies grow, we see three main types of societies. The first one is going to be sedentary. They created permanent towns. The towns were highly populated, wide streets, large farms, markets, and hundreds of dwellings or houses. This would be like what we have today. Washington is permanent, or a town that you might live in is permanent. It's got a few people, 15,000 people in Washington. We have streets, we have farms that feed us, we have stores and marketplaces, and we have houses as well. The second type is semi-sedentary, semi meaning kind of or halfway, so it's semi or kind of sedentary. These people built towns, but they then moved them every few years in search of migrating animals. And the last one we look at is non-sedentary. They did not build permanent towns. They did have small, temporary camps that could be moved anytime in continual search for plants and animals. A sedentary lifestyle, just to help you kind of remember what these are, a sedentary lifestyle, this one up here. Okay, if you have a sedentary lifestyle, you sit around and don't exercise or do anything like that. And what happens? You get big and fat. All right? And that's what happens to these cities. They stay in one place at one time, and that means that they are able to grow and get larger, and that's what happens. Sedentary societies have highly populated cities, so they grow. Non-sedentary or an active lifestyle would be they did not build towns, and it would be like you moving around all the time, exercising, and you become smaller. because you're more in shape, and these societies were smaller. So we go from not moving up here in sedentary to moving all the time in non-sedentary, and then in the middle you have semi-sedentary. The rise of civilization. Soon small societies started joining together to form vast civilizations. The first great American civilization emerged in Mesoamerica. I'm going to show you a map here in just a second, but it is a region that stretches from modern-day Mexico to Nicaragua. This is what we're talking about. This area right in here. Okay, so part of Mexico all the way to the northern tip of South America. This first civilization was the Olmec. They ruled from 1200 BC to 400 AD, and they made great advances in society, but after the Olmec, the Mesoamerican area was ruled by the Mayan people. The Mayans built great cities, had great temples, vast marketplaces, and even ball courts for games. So they were so advanced that they didn't even have to worry about constantly growing food or anything like that. They had time for leisure things like games. Okay, if they have time for all of that, do you think that they are constantly moving in search of food? Or do you think they are permanently staying in one place? They have large temples, vast marketplaces. So they are going to be a sedentary society. They're staying in one place. The Mayans are going to be sedentary. For whatever reason, these early civilizations, the Mayan and the Olmec, they come to an end. They fall apart. No one is really known for sure why they fell, but some say like natural things like volcanoes or storm or famine. But also war. They were groups of people, and then they didn't like living together anymore, and they started fighting each other and just broke apart. Eventually, what we're left with is smaller tribes. Alright? These smaller tribes, after hundreds of years, realize, well, maybe it was easier to be in a civilization. So they start to look to form larger communities. The second round of great civilizations, we're going to focus on two big civilizations, the Aztec and the Inca. Between 1300 and 1500, two great empires dominated Mesoamerica, the Inca and the Aztec. The Inca created a vast civilization in modern-day Peru, and this is what their empire looked like, this whole shaded area. So if you had to guess, it's a Native American civilization, and how many people would you say the Inca controlled? It might be more than you think. The Inca civilization influenced more than 10 million people. That is a lot of people. The Inca set up one government and laws for its people, and they also created early clocks and even had some paved roads. The Aztecs, moving on to the Aztecs, they ruled over what is now Mexico, and that is what this map down here is. This right here, where it says Mexico and has a bigger dot, this is Mexico City, and that is the current capital of Mexico, but it was also the capital of the Aztec civilization, but it was called, when they set up a huge capital city, it was called Tenochtitlan, and it held more than 140,000 people. Just for reference, the city of Washington has 15,000 people. So we are talking many, many times more than the size of Washington. Okay? Like the Inca, the Aztec united small groups under one government. They did this by using alliances and warfare to take over groups and then enforce their laws and collect taxes. How do you think these smaller groups felt about this? Basically, the Aztecs are coming in and saying, this is ours now. You're going to have to either pay us taxes, work for us, or we're going to kill you. So these small groups didn't really take kindly to that, and they didn't like that very much. And we're going to see that play out later on when the Spanish come over, and how it is a big deal that these small groups don't like the Aztecs. All right. Now, moving from Mexico and South America to North America, where we are today, societies in the north were not as complex as those in Mexico and Peru, but they were larger in scale. Historians estimate that by 1400 AD, there were as many as 7 million Native Americans living in what is now the United States. So that's quite a bit of Native Americans. A diverse range of societies began to develop as groups adapted to different climate, animals, and plant life. People in Florida do not live the same way that people in Alaska do. That's the same today as it was back then. For example, in the far north, near present-day Alaska, the Inuit people lived in the frozen tundra. Say in Missouri, if you wanted to build a house, you could just chop down some trees and you could get some wood. But in the frozen tundra of Alaska, there are no trees. What you have around you is ice. So what you have to build is things out of ice. So they built igloos. So they adapted to their climate. Another people that adapted their climate was in Arizona, the Pueblo Indians. The Pueblo people used irrigation to build large farms because the only way that you can really get water at this time is to be by a river. And if maybe the river isn't the best way or best place to live. And that's what they decided. So they decided to build irrigation systems which draws water from one source to where they are living. They also lived in multi-story mud brick houses, and this picture down here is an example of those. Some advantages of living inside this cliff like this would be that you're shaded, so you're shielded from the elements like heat and rain and all that kind of stuff. But then you're also protected by this cliff from enemies, so it's not as easy to attack you. In the northeast of the United States, the Iroquois built large villages, and they used slash and burn agriculture. They would chop down trees and burn them to clear land for farming. So what they're left with is a field, basically. They would plant their crop, and they would repeat this every year, clearing land for only one season of farming. So if they're only doing this for one season of farming, and so they plant stuff, they live there for a while, and they pick up and move, what type of society is that? We're looking at a semi-sedentary society when we're talking about the slash and burn agriculture. Native Americans interacted a lot with their neighbors, but they were isolated from the rest of the world. All right. As a result, they had no experience with European technology, like guns, warfare, culture, or the big one is disease. They have no immunity to European diseases. And we're going to see how all of these things stack up and allow the Spanish and other Europeans to come in with just a few men and take down vast Native American civilizations. But that is for another lecture. So basically what you need to get out of this lecture right now is you need to be able to draw distinctions between the three types of societies: sedentary, non-sedentary, semi-sedentary. And then you also need to be able to talk a little bit about each of the societies that we talked about, or each of the civilizations. The Mayan, the big ones are the Aztec and the Inca, and then know a little bit about the Pueblo and the Iroquois and the Inuit people as well. Alright, so that is it for Lecture 1 of Unit 1. See you guys later.